Hey everyone, I'm Garrett Hallfish. Now this week I have somewhat bad news. Last Monday, GameTrailers announced through Twitter that they're closing their doors. After 13 years, they were no longer going to be a company that day. On their Twitter they announced, after 13 years, GameTrailers is closing down today. Thank you for your continued support over the years. It has been an adventure. Now, GameTrailers, what was fantastic about them is that they seemed like the underdogs. They were not the A-tier team, so they were not super corporate. They were the ones that felt really down to earth. They felt more relatable to you, and because of that, everything they said felt more impact just because it didn't seem like it was going through all this screening. It just felt like this is what they thought, so this is what they're telling you. And that was fantastic, it was refreshing, it was great, and I'm sad to see it go. And so a number of people lost their jobs, and I'm sure immediately a bunch of them will find new jobs and move on from there. But it's a shame, and these people are Brandon Jones, Kyle Bosman, Michael Huber, Ian Hink, Don Casanova, Daniel Bloodworth, Brad Ellis, Matt Blair, and Ben Moore. And these were fantastic guys. They just felt like you were your family, and it's a shame to see them go. Now, all of them had their own kind of shows, especially in the past few years, because as it neared its end, I don't know if it's the good tell or what, but they decided to go in kind of a different direction and started a lot more shows. And it was great because you started seeing these people that had been in the woodworks that are finally on the forefront, and they had great personalities and they were showing them off, and every single show was different, and it felt like it should be its own show. And so I just wanted to talk about these and to talk about these people and share my love for them with you guys. Now, Brandon Jones, the owner of the company, he's the guy that's known as the voiceover guy. He is the one that voices almost every single review, and in more recent years, every single review. And that's because when you hear those reviews, they sound like the most professional review. Like, it doesn't sound like it's a game site reviewing them. It sounds like you're watching some TV network presenting you the review. It just sounds perfect. It's natural, but it still sounds high-end.
Even as each step is filled with fear in Bloodborne, you'll have an insatiable craving to push ahead.
And that is fantastic, and I hope to hear it more in the future. But what he also did, because of his joy for trailers, he also started a show called Let's All Go to the Trailers, which eventually became Trailer Score. And basically what they did, they would just talk about trailers each week, and what they would do is just give a score at the end, and they would talk about why it got that score. And it was fantastic because you basically started to learn what made a good trailer. And so even if you were at E3 and there's this epic looking trailer, if it didn't explain what was in the game or even help show you what the game could be, that's not a good trailer. It might get you hyped, but that's not a good trailer to reveal the game. And that show was just great in teaching you these lessons so that you can better grasp what these trailers are, and hopefully with enough of us learning this information can eventually change trailers in the future to become better. Now, Kyle Bosman had a show, The Final Bosman, and this show was fantastic because it basically took Kyle Bosman's sarcastic nature and brought it to the forefront, but he also brought topics that not everyone was talking about. These were the topics that you didn't know needed to be talked about, but he somehow found every week a lot of really important information on the smallest of things. And that's why that show was so refreshing, because you'd go in and he might just talk about Parappa the Rapper, or he might just talk about the X button, but that became the most engrossing 15 minutes about that thing that you've ever heard on the internet. And then the overarching story in the background, the canon that is The Final Bosman, it just felt like you were part of something. If you had to keep coming back because you didn't want to miss any of that canon. You wanted to know what was happening to Liquid Bosman and the Germans, and you just had to find out what was going to happen next. Now, Michael Huber, I'm so glad that they gave him a show finally. Huber hype. I'm sad to see that it's only as long as it is. But that show was great because just the way that he yells and the way that he's passionate about every single game, he portrays that passion and pushes it onto you and encourages you to be passionate about your games, no matter how small, and makes them all feel super big, and they all feel really important. They feel like you should be playing these games, and they all feel like 10 out of 10s. Like if you don't just like a game, you love a game. That is exciting to finally have people not middle of the ground who just are like flat out, I love this, and just encourage everyone to love that. That was super refreshing, and he loved the fans, and Michael Huber's a great guy. Next up we have Mandatory Update, which is a show that was created by Ian Hink and Elise Willems. Elise Willems left about a couple months ago to go on to another job, work with Funhouse. Now, this show, think of it as kind of the Colbert Report, The Soup, one of those shows where they talk to you about the news that happened that week, but then in a joking manner. They crack jokes about it. And they varied in length and often varied in style, but some of the gags in this show were fantastic, and it's actually surprising how much news you got out of this, and for as much as they were joking, the news was often correct, and their opinions were also great. And it was just great to see Ian Hink fly off the handle, then Elise Willems bring him back, or continue going off the handle, and it was just a wild ride, and you should be watching it. And then Elise Willems, I wish she had done more of this, but she started a show, just a 5-part series, called Ladies in the Lobby, and it basically brought 5 notable game journalists, women in game journalism, that they just shared their opinions on certain things. So every episode had its own topic, and it would just go on, and kind of in the style of VH1's I Love the 80s, I Love the 90s. It just went back and forth between all of them, giving their opinions to these questions, and it was just refreshing to see because there's not a whole lot of women in this field, I feel, or they're not as prominent, and they should be, because oftentimes they have just as important things to say. And this show just had a lot of production value, and it was just really well put together, and I really wish there were more than 5 episodes. Now, some of these other people, you don't see them as often, and it's a shame, because when they started to bring them to the forefront, that's when you start to see their colors show and show what sets GameTrailers apart. The fact that they're not just another pawn, they all are very distinctly different. Great example of that is when Don Casanova, when Super Mario Maker came out, and all of a sudden he has Don's Design Lab, which was a funny show because he loved creating levels, and he would just tweak them and try to make them better and better so that people would enjoy them more and more. And then they would show where you could download the level, and it was just fun. It made level creators more interesting than I actually think they are, and that's a hell of a feat. One show that I don't think gets nearly the amount of love that all the others do is Tabletop Adventures, started by Ben Moore, where a few of them would gather around every week and just play D&D, and they play the same campaign, and it would just continue on and on and on and on. It's also a podcast series, and that show is fantastic, mainly because they all do the role-playing so well, and they all get into the characters, and even if it doesn't necessarily suit the team, they play their characters as they are meant to be played, and it makes for an enjoyable listen. You just hear them with these ridiculous stories and these crazy situations going at it. Is really hard to capture in video, but they did it so well, just because the way they describe everything is so encapsulating that you just imagine every little thing. It's one of the few podcasts where when I listen to it, I can't do anything else because I just want to imagine what is going on, and it's just a fun time. Other things that set GameTrailers apart is that they're not afraid to do things that are different. They're not afraid to try things that are a little bit ridiculous, to just have fun. And that's really evident in things like the Stanley voice-off, Opinion Yell, the Final Bets. These are shows that they're just having fun with themselves. You're just there for the ride. And because of these, you get even more special things where you might get Michael Huber playing clarinet for everyone. You have an hour's worth of terrible one-liners from Kyle Bosman. These are special moments where they're just having fun. Not to mention, they also have some shows that really celebrate games for their entire medium. You've got Level that just talks about the level design and like how perfect some of these levels are in these video games. You've got Pop Facts and Pop Fiction that just go into the history behind these games and rumors behind these games and try to solve them or just let you know about them. It's almost like Mythbusters. These kind of things just make you enjoy games for other reasons. You're not just playing the games, you're not just watching the games, you're learning about the games and behind the scenes about those games. That's something that was really special that I got from GameTrailers that you don't always get from every site. And with that, I know it was a bit of a ramble, but I just wanted to share my love for GameTrailers with you guys. And if you are a fan of GameTrailers or you follow their Twitter accounts, please share your love with them, share your support, because I'm sure they could use it. And I know all of them will be on their feet in really quick time, but wherever they end up, however many of them end up together, whatever they do in the future, you know it's going to be great. You know it's going to be honest. You know it's going to be something special. So with that, if you'd like to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at NerdMuchCom. You can also find us on Facebook via the description below. And please, for those of you on YouTube, please like and subscribe via that little red button on the bottom. I'll see you next time.